Hello and welcome to Week in Review with me, Jane Secker. Kevin Maguire and Eve Pollard are here to look back at the big stories of the last 7 days. What have been your big stories of the week, Eve?
Well, the thing that most surprised me was in her first PMQs, Theresa May leant forward and was talking about bosses not going, and she leant forward in a really Margaret Thatcher way, low over the dispatch box, and said, "Who could that mean, Mr. Corbyn?" I mean, she looked at him in that straight way. I was surprised.
Kevin, your top story?
Yeah, I think it's got to be the start of the Labour leadership election. Jeremy Corbyn v Owen Smith. I think it'll be very, very dirty.
Well, a lot more on both of those stories in a second, but first let's get a taste of what the week was all about. Unsurprisingly, Brexit was on the agenda for Theresa May's first full week in office, meeting German Chancellor Angela Merkel and French President Francois Hollande. After facing Mrs May at Prime Minister's questions for the first time, Jeremy Corbyn tried fending off the challenge from his own side. He launched his campaign to remain Labour's leader. Owen Smith, now the only rival for the job. A report accused Russia of carrying out a state-sponsored doping programme for its athletes at the Sochi Winter Olympics. Its track and field team were also told their appeal against a ban from the Rio Games had failed. Donald Trump accepted the Republican nomination for president, although the party's convention wasn't without controversy. Turkey's government reacted to last week's failed coup with mass arrests of military figures and sackings and suspensions of leading judges and academics. South African prosecutors say they'll appeal against the 6-year sentence given to Oscar Pistorius for murdering his girlfriend Reeva Steenkamp, branding it shockingly too lenient. On the week when the sun came out for summer, Public Health England said we should all take vitamin D supplements because we aren't getting enough sunlight. And the Pokemon Go craze landed one American in trouble. The man was driving while playing the game, and rather than catching a Pikachu, he ran into the back of a police car in Baltimore. Fortunately, nobody was hurt.
That's what I get for playing
Well,
well, quite a busy week. But the Olympics were in there. I mean, Eve, do you think all Russian athletes should be banned? That's what's now being discussed.
Well, I think it would be very hard to trust them. I mean, after Sochi, where it was obviously politically inspired tampering and people taking drugs, and then amazingly, politically said, obviously, from Putin himself, they got these tamper-free bottles, changed the urine so you wouldn't test positive for taking drugs. And, of course, in Sochi, more Russians won medals than anyone else. How could you trust any of them when you know the government is right behind taking drugs?
I mean, Kevin, do you think any country is truly clean? There's got to be cheats out there amongst all nations, hasn't there?
No, I'm sure they are absolutely happening. But it's when you have a country and it's state-sponsored and it's organised to that degree, and it was so efficient and so effective and so terrifying. And I'm usually against collective punishments where some innocent some innocent athletes will be hurt. But this was of a completely different nature to what we've seen before.
OK, let's move on to politics. And this week, Theresa May took her first steps into Europe as Prime Minister, discussing, among other things, the UK leaving the European Union. Her meetings with the German Chancellor Angela Merkel and the French President Francois Hollande followed her first Prime Minister's questions, going head-to-head with Jeremy Corbyn. Here's how it went.
He refers to me as the second woman Prime Minister. In my years here in this House, I've long heard the Labour Party asking what the Conservative Party does for women. Well... making us Prime Minister. I suspect that there are many members on the opposition benches who might be familiar with an unscrupulous boss. A boss who doesn't listen to his workers, a boss who requires some of his workers to double their workload, a boss, and maybe even a boss who exploits the rules to further his own career. Remind him of anybody?
Well, Eve, you already mentioned him. Did she remind you of anybody there, Kevin?
Oh, she did well, and he doesn't think very well on his feet on these occasions. And, for instance, he was asking questions about Boris Johnson bringing up his past attacks on Barack Obama. She doesn't answer it. He doesn't come back to it and push it home. So she's got the theatrics of it. He hasn't. Tony Blair used to have the theatrics. Gordon Brown wouldn't when he was Prime Minister. And it matters for your morale of your own side in Parliament. But also, a lot of people do watch Prime Minister's questions, and you can, if you look a good leader there, that's votes in the bag.
Do you
She
think
was well
channeling
prepared,
Margaret
wasn't she?
Thatcher is the right way for Mrs May to
Well,
go?
it's probably the right way for her backbenchers. I'm not sure it's the right way for everybody, but I would think it's the right way for her backbenchers. And it was a bit of fun. I mean, everybody had been saying how she was very dull and very boring, but actually she was quite witty and she was quite interesting for the first PMQs. And also, I think the fact that she's prepared to have a go, and she had a go from the very off by immediately saying she wanted to thank the 140 Labour MPs who joined her voting for Trident. She's just gone on the attack. Why not? I guess she thinks, get on with it.
And Kevin, briefly, we've seen her travelling across to Germany and to France this week, pushing British position, but she is going to have to negotiate Brexit, isn't it? It's not going to be easy for her in these European negotiations over the next few months.
No, they seem to get on better with Angela Merkel and Francois Hollande in some ways.
She towered over Hollande, didn't she? She changed from small shoes to tall shoes.
Yeah, to be honest, I think a garden gnome would. He is rather small. Not that there's anything wrong, if anyone's watching, they're small. You can still be big in personality. But and a schoolgirl French is as bad as my schoolboy French. But she did come back with Francois Hollande saying, if you want to be in the single market, a lot of jobs, a lot of trade rely on that, you're going to have to accept free movement. So we saw, really, the barriers she does face as she negotiates Brexit.
On the other hand, he's up for election in May, and I would be surprised if he's actually the candidate, because they're booing him.
I don't think you're going to get a French leader to give on that, though, on that market.
But she got on better with Merkel. Merkel was more relaxed about timing, wasn't she?
Well, another leader who's up for election is Jeremy Corbyn. He was on surer footing on Thursday at the launch of his bid to remain party leader. He told our political editor Faisal Islam that he was the man to unite the party.
We've got huge support amongst party members, party activists, trade union affiliates, members of the community as a whole. Obviously, I wish MPs would be more supportive, but I hope that at the end of this leadership campaign, they'll recognise, as I said in the opening speech this morning, we all have a duty and an obligation to represent the people that sent us to Parliament, and I hope we can work together.
So, Kevin, is he the man to unite the Labour Party?
Well, we'll find out. It's going to be very difficult for him with his MPs, but he may have retained the support amongst Labour members in the country. And I think he's quite right when he says MPs should have been more supportive. I think that coup failed. Some didn't give him a chance from the beginning. But it just comes back to the question of his competence and his credibility wider. Can you imagine Prime Minister Jeremy Corbyn in Downing Street? Now, he thinks he can. His supporters think he can. But there is a cult around him now, and I've just met too many people who used to be Labour voters who've taken against him.
And what about Owen Smith, Eve? Is he the man to take him on? Do you think Andrew Legal should have dropped out? Do you think Labour should have at least had a woman in there in the running?
I don't know that either of them are the ones who really should take him on. I suspect there will be a split. I keep hearing that the Parliamentary Labour Party have raised a lot of money for a split. Because actually, I think Jeremy Corbyn, who pretends to be everybody's grandpa, is quite threatening with deselection. If you don't follow me, there'll be deselection.
Although he told Sky News this week that he's not a bully at all.
He is not a bully, but he lets people bully. I mean, I think Momentum slightly is bullying. I mean, there never was a culture of bullying in the Labour Party.
Right, well, let's move across to politics, the other side of the pond. And it's fair to say that a year ago it may have seemed impossible, perhaps a joke to some, but Donald Trump has now formally accepted the Republican presidential nomination and used his convention speech to set out his stall for his party and the country.
This is the legacy of Hillary Clinton. Death, destruction, terrorism, and weakness. We will make America strong again. We will make America proud again. We will make America safe again. And we will make America great again. God bless you and good night. I love you.
Can he do it, Eve? Do you think he will become president? Can he beat Clinton?
In the end, I don't think so. But what nobody really thought of in Brexit is there are a lot of angry people who feel that politicians have never been talking to them, don't care about their lives. And, of course, in America, there's the haves and the have-nots enormous gaps. Of course, Mexicans won't vote for him, and other groups won't vote for him, but it's quite scary that he's got this far, and he could actually go all the way.
Well, no one thought he would get this far, did they? Not many people thought he would get this far, Kevin.
No, but he was a standout character in a Republican field that was too large, and he says inflammatory things all the time, whether it's women, Muslims, Hispanics, whoever. And it's kind of nonsense, but a lot of people in America, you're right, have a right to be angry because they've been dealt a very bad hand, but he's not the answer. He's not going to help them with their homes and get them higher wages and more secure jobs and better education for their kids.
That's right.
Well, the only good thing, if he ever got to the White House, and it would be a nightmare, is we would see what he was really like and he would be exposed as a fraud.
Well, another person
the checks and balances also, I presume.
You hope so.
I
no,
hope
I'm thinking
so.
of the courts and Congress, but not necessarily.
Questions too about another Republican, our gaffe of the week, and only one contender this week. If you're going to copy someone's work, Mrs. Trump, perhaps try to make it somebody a little less high profile.
My parents impressed on me the values that you work hard for what you want in life.
Barack and I were raised with so many of the same values, like you work hard for what you want in life.
That your word is your bond, and you do what you say and keep your promise. That you treat people with respect.
That your word is your bond, that you do what you say you're going to do. That you treat people with dignity and respect.
Do you think it overshadowed Trump's nomination this week, or do you think we'll forget it?
I don't think we will forget it. I mean, we disagree about this. I tell you why. I feel sorry for Melania, who was obviously given this piece of paper probably on the morning when she was having that very nice...
she played a role in writing it.
Did she?
They got somebody to agree to carry the can, but she played a role. No.
I was just looking at the very exquisite makeup. My feeling is that if you can't organise for your wife's speech to be an original speech, how are you going to deal with Vladimir Putin? I mean, it really is important that, you know. And I just thought, just a tragedy. I mean, it will be forgotten up to a point because we'll now go on to the other convention, the Democrats. But it sort of sticks in your mind slightly.
It did lead to a whole load of Twitter, a hashtag famous Melania Trump quotes, which included things like, I have a dream, I did not have sexual relations with that woman, my favourite, I would have got away with it if it weren't for you meddling kids. But she also channeled Rick Astley, did you notice? That she said that Trump would never give up and never let you down.
There you are. I knew Rick Astley was coming back.
We don't know if he got any royalties from that.
She's an Andrea Leadsom of US politics.
Do send us in your nominations. You can use the hashtag WNR if you've got a gaffe of the week that you think we should include next week. Time for the break now and our quick quiz. I wonder if either of you know what could be a surprise inclusion in the Olympic Games in 2024? Oh. They don't know? Do you know at home? Find out after the break. Back to Week in Review with me, Jane Secker. I'm joined by Kevin Maguire, Associate Editor of the Daily Mirror, and the journalist and author Eve Pollard. Now, before the break, we asked which sport could be the surprise inclusion in the Olympic Games in 2024. Blank faces around the table.
Frisbees, tiddlywinks.
Not quite. Yeah. It is the medieval sport of jousting.
No.
Yes, English Heritage are leading the calls for duels to be part of the Games. This isn't an April Fool. And they argue that if surfing, climbing, golf, skateboarding can all be included, why not jousting?
Can you imagine taking drugs and then getting on the horse?
I suspect most of the world never got into jousting.
Most of the world was behaving properly or just trying to...
I think you think about things like dressage, not that I'm diminishing dressage, but it is essentially getting a horse to do something slightly very intricate.
Yes.
It's a similar sort of thing, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I think it would be quite ridiculous, don't you? I mean, let's not go further back in history.
I know you don't want to diminish. What a lousy sport.
Well, it's the horse that should get the medal.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, English Heritage, we disagree, but we'll find out. It's up there in the list anyway. Right, now this week the fallout from the failed coup in Turkey continued. Our Middle East correspondent Alex Rossi was there and sent this report.
This closed-circuit television shows a lone figure running into the road to try and stop a speeding tank in its tracks. Incredibly, he survives this and a second attempt to stop another tank. The pictures have become a symbol of the people power that thwarted the uprising. Other images are also emerging from Friday night, showing soldiers aiming their guns and firing at civilians. The Turkish government has admitted the attempted coup nearly succeeded, and across the country the crackdown continues. 99 admirals and generals who've been paraded before the cameras on their way into court have now been charged. It is a substantial part of the military, which was once revered in this country. Tens of thousands of people have also been forced to resign from their jobs in the police, judiciary and education. Academics have been banned from travelling abroad as the purge on state institutions grows in scale. In fact, anyone suspected of having links to this man, Fethullah Gulen, who's accused of masterminding the coup, is a target. From his base in the United States, Gulen has denied involvement, but Turkey says it's provided US officials with evidence and is demanding his extradition. President Erdogan's critics accuse him of using the purge to silence his enemies. He's promising to introduce new legislation and cleanse the country's institutions of the virus responsible for the plot.
Kevin, what future do you think now for Turkey?
I think it's very grim. State of emergency, human rights suspended. Must be 60,000 people now have lost their jobs or been arrested. And the reaction will be terrible from Erdogan, who's very authoritarian, was pushing Turkey down a very religious road, which is very, very counterproductive if you are a secularist. So no, I think it is really, really grim for Turkey. I think the coup was wrong. People who oppose Erdogan oppose the coup too, but they will be made to suffer.
Eve, a lot of talk about the potential of Turkey joining the EU. Do you think
that was sort of
changes?
nonsense.
It was a lie.
I mean, they were nowhere near joining the EU for all sorts of reasons. But here you have this cleric who lives in America, who's a liberal Islamist, and then you've got Erdogan, who, of course, in the meantime, while he's arresting all these people, is having a go at the Kurds, is having a go at everybody who is against him. And it will become a dictatorship, I'm afraid.
No, he's the new sultan. He will take control. He will not brook any opposition.
No. Right, let's have a look at your paper stories of the week. Eve, to you first. It appears that you can be too healthy to have a doctor now.
This seems crazy to me. Apparently, if you haven't visited your doctor for 5 years, you get crossed off the list. They send you 2 letters, and then you get crossed off the list. I thought the whole point was that you should try and stay healthy and not cost the NHS. I mean, this is apparently something to do with GPs' pay, and there are apparently lots of ghost lists where
the surgeries get £136 for each patient that they have, and if that patient no longer exists or is moved, the argument is.
And I can imagine that's a system that doesn't probably work very well. People move away, people die, they don't get off the list. They've got to be a more sensible way to pay GPs than per head, because also, you know, in a different area you might have people who are much healthier. The southeast is supposed to be healthier than the north, the weather's better, and if you might live in an area where there are lots of babies being born, you've got a lot more work. It seems a crazy way to pay them, and I'm really worried that older people will get these 2 letters, may not twig,
concern,
and they'll fall apart.
It's a bit worrying if a GP doesn't notice you've died, so you know, you don't need to be on the list.
That could easily happen, couldn't it?
I mean, I'd have thought they'd see the body and miss you, but there we are.
Eve, the sale of ARM Holdings this week, it was painted as a great deal for British business, but possibly not such a great deal for everybody.
I think it's very, very sad that we have these great businesses. By the way, I'm not up to all technical things, but I didn't realise this was this genius business, started in Britain, and actually it's in all of our phones, it's in every technical thing we have.
I think a lot of us had no idea that we were carrying around a bit of this company.
Absolutely, and also very bad, I think, for Financial Pages that didn't warn us and didn't tell us about it. The fact it's going to now be owned by the Japanese probably means it's perfectly safe, but it's a pity that it's such a great British business and it's off.
Do you think we should be fighting to keep these kind of businesses, or do you think it's just, you know, it's market, it's the world, and companies should be free to be bought by whoever wants them.
Yeah, but you can stop that happening if you like, if you have the law to try and protect it. Because if you have them headquartered here, you have more control. They're less likely to sack people. And remember Cadbury's coming in, being bought by the Americans, closed a factory near Bristol.
And changed the eggs.
Some of the foreign owners are good. Tata have been very good with Jaguar Land Rover, steel less so. But now I'd rather have companies owned and based here.
And Kevin, your final paper choice this week. Happy news for Pippa Middleton.
Yep, she's getting married to this James Matthews. £200,000 engagement ring. Oh, God. I mean, ridiculous. What's she going to do about the bridesmaid? She's going to make sure she's got a big bottom or something. She's not going to be overshadowed after what happened at her sister's wedding.
The Duchess of Cambridge. Actually, I think it was a very nice thing that the Duchess of Cambridge, on her wedding day, let her bridesmaid also wear white. Wasn't saying, I'm going to put her in horrible pink or peach. And she got...
You're going to be in mauve.
You know, and I think what would be very nice is if she's the matron of honour.
Yeah.
And possibly
George
wears...
and Charlotte.
Absolutely.
See, we're getting excited about it already. Kevin's just shaking his head in despair.
There are going to be months of comparing the dress, the shoes, the hat... Just get used to it.
I wish the couple well, as I would any other, but I just cannot stand it, and you're quite right. I mean, it's pathetic, the attention.
Thank you very much for taking your papers. What about your ups and downs? Now, does this even get you going, Kevin? What about the romance in this story? This is Eve's first choice. You're sending up the couple who met. Well, he was the tweeter at Waterstones, and she fell in love with his Twitter account.
And she works in the circus. And she read his tweets, which I think are quite funny and quite literary. I think in this day and age of illiteracy, we should be pleased. And they eventually met, and they married.
This was her first tweet. Well, I'm in love with whoever's manning the Waterstones Oxford Street account. Be still, my actual beating heart. And this is the one she sent on her wedding day.
Yes.
Oh, dear reader, I'm married.
It's fabulous.
Lovely.
Jane, you know.
Jane Eyre. But I love that. I've got a romantic heart. It's just I can't.
It
is.
Kevin,
I can't extend it to Pippa and James.
Look, I wish him well. I wish him well as I wish this couple, but I feel a bit more sincere about wishing this couple well.
Well, we send them well. It's a lovely story. Everybody loves it. So we're sending them up.
It's a movie.
We didn't even say their names, did we? We should have said their names.
Victoria O'Brien and Jonathan.
Victoria and Jonathan, bless them. Yes. You're sending down though, Eve. The people who got stuck in IKEA's car park for 3 hours in Reading.
Well, let me just tell anybody, if you want to get divorced, the best thing is to go with your partner to IKEA. I think I've never been to IKEA with my husband without having an argument.
Because you have a row in the store.
Well, first of all, you have a row about going. Then when you get there, you have a row about in the store. And they arrange it so you have to walk miles.
You go through everything.
And you go through everything. And then, of course, you row about what you're going to buy about. Then you row about finding it. If you want a divorce, my suggestion, go to IKEA on a Saturday. Always works.
Okay. You can't get the boxes in your car.
We'll let you round when you get home when you're trying to put them up. So we're sending IKEA and its car park down. Kevin, you're sending up Sam Allardyce. We're still waiting for him to be confirmed.
We are. As England manager, he's the manager of Sunderland, my team. Wish he was staying. When he was at Newcastle, we called him Fat Sam. Sunderland, we call him Big Sam. when he deserts us and goes to England, he's Fat Sam again. I'm sorry.
All right, so we're sending Sam Allardyce up. Good move for him. Maybe not so good for Sunderland. But you're sending down Robert Doyle. Now, who's a burglar who was nabbed by what he nibbled?
Corey Devon, every time he'd broke into somewhere, he'd eat something, like a piece of cake, or he left half a whisper, so the cops got him via his DNA. So he's dozy and daft as well as nasty. Got 20 weeks.
And the local paper made the most of it with the headline Careless Whisper, which we loved.
Clever.
So we're sending it down. Yeah. Thank you both very much. Well, thank you. Don't forget to send us also your nominations, if you don't want nominations for Ups and Down, using the hashtag WinR. Well, thank you very much for joining us for our review of the week. We'll be back with much more next week, but for now, it's goodbye from them.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
And it's goodbye from me. Goodbye.